Hello and welcome to episode number 74 of the Confident at Work podcast. I still have to check myself because I still want to call it the SU Coaching Podcast, formerly the SU Coaching Podcast. And this episode, we're going to be talking about switching off over the holidays. So, do you wish that you could switch off? And this is in your holidays, right? The time when you're not at work. But as we're doing this, also be thinking about whether you wish you could switch off at other times too, maybe during the weekend and maybe after you finish your work during the day. I'm going to be using holidays as shorthand for any time that you actually want to switch off. And obviously, we have holidays coming up, so this is a hot topic at the moment. But the reason that I'm doing this episode is because every time I start working with a new client, every time I start working with somebody one on one, we dig into where they are now and we identify bits of a low confidence cycle that they might currently be in. So we know exactly what work we need to do in order to grow their confidence, in order to get them into a high confidence cycle. And then before we leave that first call, we always do, if they want to, a visualization where I ask them to imagine a day in the life. So, a day in their working life, a day in their working world where they just sit quietly and they use their imagination. And I just walk them through a day in their working life when they're feeling as confident as they want to. Whether that's an 8 out of 10, a 10 out of 10, whatever they've identified. And I just ask them to notice what happens during that day. And they go through various kind of scenes in their mind and they think about how they'll feel and how they'll interact with people and what will be different. And one of the things that people very often tell me is that in that day, they were switching off when they were leaving work, like really switching off. Instead of fretting about the day and taking it all with them, they were able to kind of just leave it and switch it off and come away. And when I start coaching with people, we sometimes find that that extends into holiday time too. And you might be the same. So you might not switch off as much as you would like to in holidays. And there might be a number of reasons for that. But I wanted to explore it with you today because very often, how much we switch off, when we switch off, how we switch off is an unconscious habit and something that we might not really have given a lot of thought or intention to, but you can. And I'm not saying that you have to do something differently. You may want to, you may not, but it definitely is worth just spending a little bit of time being intentional and thinking. Because if you're not intentional, you'll just repeat old unconscious patterns, and they actually may not be the patterns that you want. But if you know what those patterns and that programming are, you can at least decide whether you like it or not and whether you want to keep it. And if you don't want to keep it, what you might like to do differently. So I thought of the reasons that I've heard before, and maybe the reasons that I've thought of too, for not switching off in the holidays, at the end of the day, at weekends. And I'm going to give you a few here because these are going to be different for different people. So, if you want to switch off more, but you don't, here's a few ideas as to possibly why you don't. Now, some of these may resonate with you and some of them may not, but I'm offering a few so that you can maybe pick out and identify, oh, is that one me? Am I thinking that? Is that how things are going for me? Is that why I'm not switching off if I want to? And I'm going to caveat this by saying you may not want to, and I'm not saying you should, but if you do want to and you're currently not, maybe one of these might help you to figure out why. So the first one is maybe you think you're not allowed to, or maybe you're actually not allowed to. So you might be someone who is on call, you might have a phone with you, or maybe you suspect or you think that you're not really allowed to ever completely log off in your mind, or in terms of checking your emails or looking at your phone, maybe you think you're not allowed. And that might be true for you, but is it definitely true? If no one's ever said explicitly that they think you should be looking at your email and checking things all the way through your holiday, or maybe even at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. before you go to bed, first thing when you wake up in the morning, if no one's ever expressly said that, maybe you've just assumed that you're not really allowed to switch off. And what if you tested it? Maybe you actually are. So, do you know other people in your organization who do switch off? And that seems to be okay. Have you ever expressly had that conversation with your boss and said, look, I'm kind of thinking, I've got this idea that it's not really okay for me to switch off and I should be, still checking things, looking at my phone, etc., all evening or all through the holidays. And, maybe they'll say, yeah, I really do want you to do that. But for some of you, they might say, no, you don't need to do that. So that's worth exploring. That's worth thinking about. Are you thinking that you're not allowed to switch off? And if you're thinking that, is it actually true? It might be, but it might not be. Another reason could be that actually you don't want to, that you want to be available 24/7, whether or not you're on holiday. Maybe you actually want that. Maybe if you do want that, you can just own that and be like, no, this is what I want to do. I want to work during my holidays. I want to be responsive and available to my clients and to my boss, etc. Maybe you really want to. But beware whether there's any kind of creeping resentment behind that. Because sometimes thinking you want to can be like code for actually, I kind of think that I have to, but it secretly does actually annoy me a bit. So maybe you really want to and it feels good to you, but maybe if there's some other feelings in there like annoyance or resentment, maybe you don't actually want to. So that's worth thinking about. Another reason that I've seen many times when I've been coaching for why people wouldn't switch off is they're not really trusting the people around them to handle things for them while they're away. So even if, in theory, you're in a supportive team where you can switch off and other people are going to cover things for you, let's say, you've done your appropriate handover and all that kind of thing, but you're still checking in, you're still wondering, you're still thinking about things. Oh, I wonder if that hearing went okay. Oh, I wonder what's going on with that project. And you're kind of checking in with people and prompting them on things. Maybe you're just not trusting other people around you to do what you think needs to be done. And you may notice that and think, well, there's really a reality to that because they're just not going to do it. That's something. But I have coached people in the past, and actually multiple people, and they've discovered that they actually do trust the people around them to pick stuff up for them and to at least do the urgent stuff or anything that comes in. They actually do trust them when they think about it, but they weren't really thinking about it. They were kind of being a bit unconscious. So when I really challenged them, they were like, no, actually, I do trust the people around me will pick stuff up and I do trust them to do, what needs doing. And I also trust them to actually come to me if there's something which is going to go way beyond that they do not know how to solve themselves. I know they will contact me. So instead of just resting in that and being confident in that and trusting the people around them and trusting their own handover, etc., they were just not trusting that at all. And it was a kind of sneaky not trusting because they didn't really even notice that that's what they were doing. And there is a podcast earlier in the series, which was a conversation with one of my former clients, Victoria. And she talked about how she wasn't really trusting the people around her when she went on holiday. So if this is you, because she tackled this beautifully, and she now goes on holiday and her mobile phone is in a box, an old biscuit tin or something, I think, in her kitchen. She doesn't look at it, she doesn't pick it up, and she really trusts and allows people to do things for her. So if this is you, maybe go back and find that episode and listen to that episode. Another reason you might not switch off is that you might not notice this is what's going on, but you may think that you've got something to prove. And this isn't a thought that's probably flashing in your mind. This is probably something that's like a bit of unconscious programming that's happening in the background. So while you're believing something like, oh, I've got something to prove, or I need to prove myself, whatever flavor of thought that is, it can be sitting in the background and directing your behavior. Now, you probably don't know, but it may be directing your behavior around whether you allow yourself to switch off in the evenings, at weekends, and on holiday. You may constantly be trying to prove something. And one of the ways that your brains come up with to try and prove it is to just work harder and work longer and never switch off. And the kind of logic that we find sitting behind this is, well, I need to prove myself, or I need to prove something, so I'll just do more. So it may be that that's why you don't switch off. And the last one that I thought of, which, and you maybe can think of many more, but the last one I thought of, the reason why you might not switch off is that it might just be a habit. It might just be, oh, well, that's what that's what I do. I always look at my phone at night, and I always do stuff on weekends, and I always work during the whole, that's just what I do. And you've just never thought about what you would do if you had a blank slate and you were choosing, okay, what do I want my working life to be like? You may never have considered that and thought, actually, do you know what? I'd rather log off at 6 and then come back fresh the next day. Or I'd rather not work during the holidays and have that time and then come back fresh when I'm back from annual leave. You may never have been that intentional. So I'm going to invite you to just be a bit intentional. And maybe if you're having some time off over this Christmas holiday, to think, all right, what way do I want this to go? What do I actually want this to be like? And does that include work or not? So why would you take breaks? Why would you close down at the end of your day? Why would you close down on weekends? And why would you have holidays without work? And you may have your own reasons, but a big one that I see when I'm chatting to people is about sustainability. And sustainability in terms of your own sustainability. So if you're in your work, career, job for a long time, which, most of us are, most of us work from sometime in our 20s to 60s, or by the time we retire, we'll probably be like in our 80s. And a lot of us work pretty hard and we care about what we do. But if we don't have time to come away from it and switch off, some people find that their work isn't as sustainable. So you see people who work crazy hours, never switch off, they burn out. And I have this idea of burnout as somebody being kind of carried out of a law firm or whatever on a stretcher, or an investment firm on a stretcher. But actually, that can happen. And people can end up ill, chronically stressed, and have all kinds of health problems, burnout, where actually you're forced to take time off and could be months off. So there potentially is a physical and like a physiological price to pay for never having time to rest and refresh. And that's quite well documented. But I think there's also some more subtle signs that I don't know are as well documented. But when I've worked with people on switching off, what they've told me is when they actually managed to do it, this is clients who wanted to but couldn't. And when they actually manage to start switching off over the holidays, they'll say that they come back feeling actually refreshed, like they've actually had a break, and they come back with more enthusiasm. So I would suspect that being able to actually switch off may help you to have more motivation and more enthusiasm in the long term for your work. And so it may be a good use of time, even if you're only thinking about work, which is probably quite a strange thing in our culture. Because you also have rest of life, which isn't work. Whatever that means for you, whether you love to travel and explore new places, whether you like to spend time with friends or family, whether you like to explore different parts of your life, like your hobbies or your interests, or whether you like to do volunteer work, whatever it is that you like to do, it's good to be intentional about how you actually spend time doing that and whether you always want work, your work, to be, I'm going to say interrupting, but that's my word, those other things that you do. I was coaching somebody last week actually on switching off during the holidays. And the thing she said was that she wanted to be more present while she was at work, but she also wanted to be more present while she was at home. So she said, at the moment, I don't feel like I'm either place, because at work I'm thinking about home and at home I'm thinking about work. And I was like, what's it like to have that experience? And she shared that it was kind of felt very scattered to her. So she didn't really feel like she was very much anywhere. And she also didn't feel like she was doing that much of a great job anywhere because her mind was never where she was, or so that's how she felt. And so we've arranged, or we've coached through how she's going to switch off in her evenings, how she's going to switch off in weekends. And this will be her first time in quite a long career switching off during the Christmas holidays. So we'll see how that goes. And that idea that she had of, I said, what would it be like if you were able to switch off in the way you wanted? And she said, I think I'd actually be more present at work. So I think I'd be able to get things done in less time because I'd be able to focus. But I also think I'd be more present at home. And I think I might enjoy spending time a bit more with my kids and, doing some of the stuff that I want to do at home. And I asked her, I said I was doing this episode and asked her if I could share it. And she said, yeah, sure. But we'll update after Christmas as to how that's gone. But what is the reason for you? Why would you switch off? What's your reason? One of mine is that I find this different level of thinking happens when I'm away from the day-to-day of my work. So my brain goes, it's a very strange thing to describe, but my brain kind of seems to access this higher level where I can sort of see further out and I can think about life or even work or even the future in a different way than I can during my day-to-day, during my everyday. And I wonder if you experience that. I find that if I'm on holiday and I'm away from the doing and the busyness, I get like ideas come to me. It's like a different part of my brain just sort of switches on. And I love that. So that is one of my reasons for switching off, because I love allowing my brain to go into that space, which it doesn't really do during the day to day. I could try and force it, I guess, but I don't know that really works. So that's something I really appreciate and love about switching off. And what is that for you? Why would you switch off? And what would that look like? How are you going to do that if you want to do it? How are you going to do that practically? Who do you need to have a conversation with? Who do you need to hand things over to? Are there clients that you need to speak to? Is there a boss? Are there team members? Are you going to need to say to people, by the way, I'm going to be doing something differently this Christmas? I know that usually I always do checking my emails every day and prompting you on this, that, and the other, but I'm actually not going to be doing that this time. I'm going to be switching off. And also, that's another reason that I didn't think of before, but think about the role modeling. If you have a team, if you have a department and you're never switched off, they may feel like they can never switch off either. And you might say, oh, well, no, I've never told them that. I encourage them to switch off. But they may subtly just be going by your behavior, like do what I do, not what I say, if that's the right way of doing that phrase. So maybe be mindful of that too. What's the example that you're setting and what's the example that you want to set? I am going to be taking some time off over Christmas to chill out and spend time with my family. I'm going to put my out of office on. I find it's quite a good time anyway for me, and it may be for you too, because not as much is happening and not as much seems to be going on, certainly in my world. I don't know what yours is like. But if yours is like that too, then Christmas might be a great time for you to try something new and for you to practice. And maybe even if you're not going cold turkey, if you want to do something differently, maybe you just check something once a day, or maybe you put your phone away for the first 3 days and then look at it after that. What would be a step forward towards how you want to operate for the long term in terms of switching off? And how could you take a step towards that in this holiday time? Maybe to prove to yourself that it's possible to do something differently, because I've seen it with clients that it is. And it takes a bit of thought and a bit of intention and maybe a bit of prep and a bit of planning, but it could pay really nice dividends for the long term. Okay. That's all I have for this episode. However, I have 2 invitations for you. And the first, if you haven't already taken it, because quite a few of you have now, is to hop into the show notes and take the quiz. And the quiz is called, Are You Stuck in a Low Confidence Cycle? And basically, this quiz is for anyone who doesn't feel as confident as they want at work. So if you're not feeling, let's say you want to feel 8 out of 10 confident and you're currently at 5, this quiz is going to help you find out why you're currently at 5. It's going to tell you why you're at a 5, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to do in order to get up to a 7 or an 8 or a 9. The things that you need to think about, the things that you need to work on. And you'll get personalized results, written results, and a little video from me. So take that quiz, start 2024 differently. And the second invitation I have is there is a free class coming up in January, and it's the Grow Your Professional Confidence class. Everyone is invited who listens to the podcast to come live or to sign up anyway and get the video replay in your inbox. That is a great class where I'm going to teach you all the foundations of the work that I do with every client to help them build their confidence. So go into the show notes, click the links, take the quiz, and then come and join us live in that class. The 2 things work together really nicely, actually. I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.